It's curious, isn't it, how a handful of words can loop through your thoughts like a song you can't shake, lingering for days, maybe even months. That evening, once the echoes of our family gathering had softened into silence, my son Ethan turned to me with a gaze that felt unfamiliar. Not the easy familiarity of the boy I'd watched grow into a man, but something deeper, more probing, as if he were truly discovering who I was in that moment. And then those words slipped out, simple yet profound, and they've been whispering to me ever since. Before I dive into the heart of it, I'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Drop it in the comments below. It's one of my favorite parts, picturing all of you scattered across cities and time zones, joining me in this quiet unraveling. Let me pull you back to that night. It was one of those uncommon evenings when the whole family managed to carve out time together. No excuses, no last-minute cancellations. My brother arrived with his guitar slung over his shoulder, strumming a few off-key tunes between bites. My cousin whipped up her legendary apple pie, the kind that fills the air with cinnamon and promises of comfort. The dining room hummed with life, the soft clatter of silverware against porcelain, the golden flicker of tea lights dancing along the mantel, casting warm shadows that made the walls feel like old friends wrapping us in. Ethan, though, was more reserved than his usual self. He's never been one to chase the spotlight in a room full of chatter, but I caught him stealing glances my way, his eyes lingering just a beat too long. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was eyeing the last slice of pie, or perhaps his mind was wandering to the deadlines piling up at his office. But there was a gentleness in his look, a quiet attentiveness that made me wonder if he was etching the moment into memory, savoring the ordinary magic of us all under one roof. As the meal wound down, plates were cleared with satisfied sighs and the group began to peel away. Coats rustled on hooks by the door, hugs were exchanged with the lingering scent of vanilla from the pie, and farewells trailed off into the crisp evening air outside. I lingered in the heart of the house, the kitchen, where I could lose myself in the ritual of tidying, stacking bowls in the sink, swirling a sponge over countertops still dusted with flour, letting the residual glow of connection seep into my bones. That's when it hit me. The space between us had emptied, leaving just Ethan and me in the hush. The home, so alive with overlapping stories moments ago, now breathed easy, revealing the subtle symphony beneath, the low purr of the dishwasher winding down, the steady pulse of the wall clock marking seconds like gentle heartbeats. Ethan stood in the archway, shoulders relaxed against the frame, hands tucked casually into his jeans, his expression carrying that same enigmatic depth from the table. "You don't need to stick around for this," I said, flashing a quick smile as I buffed a stubborn spot on the island. "Head home, unwind. It's been a full day for you." "I like it here," he replied, easing into the room. "Feels good, just the two of us." The way he let the words hang, deliberate and unhurried, pulled me up short. I focused on the cloth in my grip, swirling lazy patterns across the granite, but his nearness registered like a soft current. Solid, unassuming, yet charged with intent. We eased into small talk at first, the kind that oils the wheels of familiarity, how the pie's crust had flaked just right, how the autumn chill had held off longer than expected, painting the leaves in stubborn golds and reds, and how my cousin always over-catered, as if feeding an army instead of a handful of us. But woven through the chatter was a subtle undercurrent, a gravity that tugged at the edges of our sentences, inviting something more. When I finally pivoted to meet his eyes, he was nearer than I'd gauged, close enough to note the faint lines fanning from the corners of his lids, the ones that deepened when he pondered life's tangles. "You seemed lighter tonight," he ventured, the observation landing soft but unexpected, like something in you was shining brighter. The words nudged a chuckle from me, more reflex than mirth. "Must be the chamomile tea kicking in. Warms you from the inside out." "Could be," he allowed, though the knowing curve of his mouth suggested he saw through the deflection. To bridge the pause, I busied my hands with the kettle, steeping fresh bags into mugs that steamed with herbal notes, and we settled at the scarred oak table that had borne witness to countless meals. What had felt bustling under the family's energy now stretched vast, amplifying every shift of fabric, every sip's quiet echo. The single lantern above us had dimmed to a cozy amber, its light pooling like honey across the wood grain. Shadows played across Ethan's features, softening the angles of his jaw, making his gaze seem even more inviting, unguarded. Our conversation meandered from the surface. His latest project at the firm, the books he'd been meaning to crack open but hadn't, the relentless blur of seasons folding into one another. Before long, though we veered into richer territory, the stuff of souls rather than schedules, we spoke of regrets that nipped at the heels of joy, of dreams deferred to the someday shelf. In those exchanges, I sensed the barriers I'd erected, brick by careful brick over the years, yielding just a fraction, allowing slivers of vulnerability to slip through. He truly heard me, not as the matriarch orchestrating another gathering or the keeper of traditions, but as a woman navigating her own hidden currents, her aspirations and unspoken shadows. A distant chime from the grandfather clock in the hall pulled my eyes to the window, where night had deepened the garden into inky silhouettes. "Time's slipping away," I murmured, half reluctant to shatter the spell. "You should head out before the roads get too dark." But Ethan didn't rise. Instead, he leaned in, forearms braced on the table's edge, his tone even but earnest. "Truth is, I'm not quite done here yet." Such plain words, yet they rippled through me like a pebble breaching a pond's calm surface, stirring depths I hadn't anticipated. No urgency colored his voice, no plea, just raw candor, the sort that's become scarce in the rush of routines. I held his gaze, fishing for the perfect reply, but he pressed on, delivering the phrase that's haunted my quieter hours. Those few syllables that reframed him entirely in my eyes. "I'm not quite done here yet," he repeated, and the kitchen's stillness seemed to huddle closer, expectant. The lantern's flame had ebbed low, wax gathering in uneven rivulets at its stem, wobbling as if eavesdropping on our unfolding. I draped the cloth over the chair's back, my fingers unsteady for reasons I couldn't yet articulate. A tremor born of emotion cresting before language could lasso it. "All right," I breathed. "Then linger a while." He inclined his head, unmoving, his eyes holding a tenderness I struggled to place. For an instant, my mind spun practical worries. Was it finances weighing on him? A snag at work he'd shielded from the group's ears? But no shadows of crisis clouded his face. What bloomed there was affection, heavy with the gravity of what lingers unsaid too long. "Evelyn," he started, using my given name like a bridge across the years, and the sound settled over me gentle as a shawl. "There's something I've been holding on to, something I should have voiced ages ago." The clock's rhythm quickened in my ears, syncing with the fridge's faint drone. Memories cascaded unbidden. Snapshots of Ethan as a child, scraped knees from backyard adventures, the feverish nights I'd read him tales until dawn chased the chills away, the way he'd bury his face in my shoulder after a storm rattled the windows. In those frames, I was always the doer, mending hems, packing lunches, steering through tempests with lists and resolve. I regretted fleetingly the haste that had robbed me of pausing, of absorbing emotions like one savors a horizon's hues, unaltered. "I've shouldered this since your father passed," he continued, voice threading steady through the quiet. "The place turned hollow without him, and you powered through solo. I vowed to toughen up, to spare you any extra strain. But holding back, that only piled on more." He drew a measured breath, eyes dropping to his palms, broad, steady, echoes of his dad's calloused grip from years at the workbench. I swallowed against the lump rising, willing my composure to hold. "Shouldered what exactly?" I prompted, this guilt gnawing at me that I wasn't there enough. That I should have dropped by unannounced, brewed coffee just to chat, the way I'd raid the fridge for your fresh-baked bread back in the day. I froze up, not knowing how to show up without an invitation, and you never extended one. A pang bloomed low in my chest, an ancient twinge I'd buried beneath grocery runs and garden weeding. I didn't know how to ask, I confessed. It felt like cracking open, admitting the cracks in my armor. I've always played the "I've got this" role, even on the days I was unraveling. His lips quirked in a bittersweet grin, warm with recognition. "That's you to a T. Guess it rubbed off. I do the same dance." The lantern sputtered, a wisp of smoke trailing upward like a sigh. I nudged my mug of cooling tea toward it, tempted to snuff the glow, then hesitated. Let it fade naturally, I decided. Suits the mood. We lingered in the dimming light. The clocks whisper our companion while beyond the panes, autumn's velvet dark pressed against the glass, turning the room into a self-contained world. He shifted forward, elbows claiming space on the table, a habit I'd gently chided in his youth. Tonight I let it be, granting grace to the imperfections. "There's another layer to this," Ethan said. "I get afraid, you know. Always the fixer, never the feeler." I worried you'd retreat behind that wall of busyness like a shield against the ache. That one visit, you'd feel like someone I used to know, grief twisting familiarity into distance. Voicing it? That scared me most. Afraid words would summon the very rift. My inhale steadied, grounding me. No blame laced his admission, just the bare architecture of humanity, long folded and pocketed. I reflected on my own silences, filled with to-dos. Doctor visits rescheduled, gutters cleared of sodden leaves, emails firing off into the void. I'd chronicled existence as a ledger of actions, but had I illuminated the underbelly of sentiment? May I share something in return? I asked. He nodded, attentive. I was frightened too, not of you, but of dissolving into the mechanical. Control felt like a lifeline. Need felt like surrender. I held back from calling you over for a loose cabinet door or a shared pot of soup, terrified you'd glimpse the raw edges, the echo of your father's laughter in an empty hallway, the pang of his favorite mug gathering dust on the shelf, untouched since his hands last warmed it. Evelyn, he murmured, resolute yet soft, let me shoulder what's meant for me. A subtle release washed over me, like a latch lifting on a long-sealed chest. I'd awaited that permission, unaware of the vigil. Ethan lifted his mug, steam curling faint, then traced the damp outline it left behind, his fingertip orbiting it much as I'd circled the counter earlier. One last piece, he added, gaze fixed on the ring. I've been talking to a counselor about the pressure building up inside. Nothing dramatic, just a space to unpack feelings without forging them into fixes or agendas. Kept it from you to dodge the worry lines on your forehead. A swirl of emotions fluttered through, admiration laced with ease, intertwined. I'm grateful you shared, I replied. Grateful you sought it out. It's shifting things, he said. Showed me I don't have to polish myself flawless to show up. Sometimes what you crave isn't my toolkit, it's me, present, phone silenced, carving out time like it's sacred. Laughter bubbled up then, genuine and light, surprising us both with its ease. Spot on, I agreed. Time untethered from screens, perhaps with a slice of that pie to sweeten the deal. He cocked his head, grin widening. Pie and no distractions? Throw in a walk around the block and you've got me hooked. The lantern winked out with a final, hushed breath, smoke threading skyward before vanishing. The kitchen deepened into twilight intimacy, shadows forgiving the clutter of lived-in chaos, as if the veil of night had slipped indoors at last. I stood to rinse our mugs, the porcelain cool under running water, and he joined seamlessly, handing over the cloth in wordless sync. We moved in tandem, not the frenzy of post-feast frenzy, but a languid harmony, burdens eased into the ether. With the last dish tucked away, we wandered to the den, where the armchair creaked under familiar weight, and the quilt draped crookedly from an afternoon's hasty fold. He claimed a spot on the sofa first, patting the cushion beside him with an invitation that felt like homecoming. The floor lamp spilled a buttery halo across the woven rug, burnishing the weave's subtle flaws into charm. I stumbled on these the other day, he said, drawing an antique tin from the side table's drawer, your father's keepsake, latched with a tarnished hook. He unfastened it with reverence, as though coaxing a memory from slumber. Nestled inside were the faded photos, bundled by a frayed cord, edges softened by time's touch. Didn't realize you'd peeked inside, I noted, a touch of surprise threading my voice. Not for years, he admitted. Figured it was hallowed ground, not for idle hands. But last Saturday, while you tended the herb patch out back, I asked to flip through a few. You kept digging, but you gave the nod. I recalled the sun slanting through the lattice, soil cool and loamy between my fingers, the silent ascent flowing natural as breath. I nodded once more, and he selected an image from the stack, handling it like spun glass. This one's from the summer I turned 5, he said, voice catching faint. He captured us at the lake, me splashing in the shallows, you laughing with water dripping from your hair. Look at his note on the back. Fear's just love in disguise, teaching us to hold tighter. He was weary from the long hauls at the mill, but see how his eyes crinkle? Pure joy. He passed it over, and I traced the inked scrawl, the hurried loops evoking waves we'd chased on that very shore. Reading his words anew, I heard his timbre again, the wry chuckle that turned trials into tales worth retelling, polishing rough days into gems. I reckon he'd cheer this on, Ethan mused. Us, unraveling the knots while the thread's still strong, weaving stories from the frayed spots before they snap. I let the photo rest against my knee, its weight a talisman. He would, I affirmed. Always preached facing fears head-on. Bottled truths ferment into burdens, he'd say. Air them out under the sun. Ethan reclined, exhaling long and slow. All right, one more truth to unpack, he said, and I tensed instinctively. I'm eyeing a shift. Nothing drastic, just a new spot a few neighborhoods over. Closer to the commute, with room to breathe, a balcony overlooking the park. Didn't want to spring it amid the group's noise. Feared it'd echo like I'm drifting away. The notion of drifting unfurled through the air, pooling in the room's crevices. It pressed against my ribs, not with fury or fracture, but a call for careful words. I studied him, poised yet exposed, proffering the revelation like a fragile bloom. Thank you for choosing this space, I said at last. For letting me hold the unvarnished version. Chase what aligns with your rhythm. Claim that balcony for sunrises unhurried, mornings that unfold like gifts, not gauntlets. His frame softened, tension ebbing. Dreaded you'd translate move as forsake. I did for a heartbeat, I owned, voice steady as roots. But then your words on showing up resurfaced. Distance in miles doesn't dim that, it just sharpens our intent. Intent, he echoed, savoring it. That's the anchor. Let's anchor Sundays, I proposed. Non-negotiable. We simmer a stew, mute the devices, pour over one photo from the tin, swap a tale from the week that's pure observation, no tallies of triumphs or to-dos. Just the whisper of what caught our eye, a bird's shadow on the sidewalk, the way rain beads on a leaf. His gaze gleamed in the lamp's embrace, a nod sealing the pact. Count me in. Sounds like roots taking hold. Perfect, I said, a quiet bloom of assurance unfurling within. And come relocation day, I'll show up with boxes and markers, dubbing one Balcony Dreams despite your protests. You'll groan, but it'll stick, he chuckled, the note ringing clear and unbound. Fair, but only if you tag another Sunday Snaps. Agreed, I sealed it. From there, our words flowed like a river finding its channel after a bend, grateful, unforced, as if we'd crested an unseen hill. He sketched the rental he'd scoped, sunlight spilling across oak floors, a window seat perfect for sketching or simply staring at passing clouds. I confessed to the storytelling circle at the community center, where folks like me swap yarns with wide-eyed youngsters on rainy afternoons. We bartered visions like heirlooms, each exchange layering familiarity anew. Eventually, he draped the quilt over my lap, a gesture mirroring countless evenings I'd done the same for him during marathon movie nights, his small form curling against the chill. The reversal tugged at me, a tender inversion. I let it settle, honoring the reciprocity of care's quiet current. Evelyn, he said after a pause, tone dipping intimate. Those words back at the table, I'm not quite done here yet. They weren't just for the hour. They meant holding on to this us, unguarded, stripped of the hustle's hide. No reverting to surface scans over coffee. I crave sustaining this weave, I turned locking eyes. And for the first stretch I couldn't quantify. Our bond sharpened crystalline, mother and son, not scripted parts in a play of provisions, but souls sharing space where honesty breathed easy. Same here, I whispered. We nurture it. We lingered until the lamp's warmth frayed at the edges, the clock nudging toward realms where wakefulness blurs into dreams. When he rose at last, it wasn't the abrupt pivot of departures rushed. He moved with the leisure of assurance. Tomorrow's beckoned not as duties, but desires. At the threshold, he halted, surveying the scene like an artist committing canvas to mind. The coat rack's jaunty tilt, a forgotten scarf looped on the banister, the tin's gleam under lamplight. Hand on the latch, he pivoted back. Oh, and Evelyn? I love you. Not the autopilot echo of hurried calls, but the depth that resonates bone deep. The declaration alighted soft, unadorned, eternal. I love you too, I returned. The version that echoes true. He dipped his head, then crossed into the hall's cooler draft, leaving a wake of warmth. I traced his descent on the stairs, steps measured and sure. The door clicked shut soft as a secret shared, and I pressed palm to wood, drawing a steadying lungful. The house hushed once more, yet brimmed, not vacant, but resonant, rearranged to welcome dawn's first gleam. I meandered back to the den, cradling the tin, selecting a photo at whim. I didn't unfold it fully. Instead, I cupped it between palms, feeling its promise pulse like a heartbeat finally voiced.